Alderman Byron Sigcho-Lopez, 25th Ward, is with us front and center to discuss Vice President Harris' position on critical issues in this election, including the Hamas-Israel war and migration. Thank you very much for joining us, Alderman. Now, earlier this year, you participated in a protest calling for the Democratic National Convention to be canceled and criticized President Joe Biden's handling of the war between Israel and Hamas. More than 150 groups nationwide have joined the coalition to march on the DNC, and you were part of it today. Tell us a little bit about participating in the protest, and tell us overall about the what's happening outside of the convention in the different people voicing their opinions.
Well, thank you, Hugo. And I think since then, what we've seen is a movement. President Biden had to drop out of the race as the popular support, given the genocide in Gaza, continuing the really lack of plan to address the situation at the border, immigration in general. And I think voters want solutions. Voters in our community believe that there are ways to help working people right now, people who are making barely ends meet and cannot continue to access business as usual. Today in the city of Chicago, we see a demonstration of democracy. Over 10,000 people took the streets demanding the end of the genocide, to stop arming Israel when innocent women, children, and men are being killed. And they are demanding solutions for immigration, solutions for global warming, global boiling at this point. Chicago just a few weeks ago was seeing unprecedented dozens of tornadoes in a matter of hours. We must take these challenges seriously, and it's only going to happen when we coordinate efforts, not only here at home, but also we need international coordination and solidarity.
Now, Vice President Kamala Harris, who's expected to be confirmed as the party's presidential candidate this week, recently condemned the loss of civilian life in an Israeli airstrike against a school building in Gaza. While several pro-Palestinian organizations have expressed hopeful tone about the new Harris-Walz ticket, other groups see little difference between the VP and President Biden on the issue. What do you think?
Well, we see that there is a change in rhetoric. However, in actions, we saw just a few days ago another shipment of $20 billion going to Israel again, and the loss of life in Gaza, the genocide that has already cost us 40,000 people, innocent civilians and men being killed. So what people want in our city, and I think across the country, is a real change in policy. We need to make sure that we focus on the issues at home, that those billions of dollars are spent to create housing, to create Medicare for all, to make sure that we address the issue of the environment. And what we see is a change in rhetoric, but in action, we still don't have a ceasefire. We still have an escalation of conflict in the region, which is dangerous, not only for our country, but across the globe. We see more displacement, more genocides that are displacing hundreds of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. So what we see today is an opportunity, and that's what we see, and that's what is important to mobilize. I'm proud of the city of Chicago, people across the country who came mobilized peacefully, 10,000 demonstrators demanding not only a change in rhetoric, but change in foreign policy, and changes here at home when there's a need of investment of government to the real issues, the issue of poverty, the issue of inequality, racism, sexism. We saw that in a party like the Republican Party, a party that is full of fascist narratives that are only going to be challenged with a real plan for working people.
Now, let me talk to you a little bit about immigration. In 2021, Harris was tasked with addressing the root causes of migration to the U.S. from Northern Triangle countries of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Recently, she has touted her time as Attorney General of a border state, saying she went after the transnational gangs, the drug cartels, and human traffickers. In regard to if she becomes president of the United States, how do you feel she will address the issues of migration, especially as we've seen busloads and busloads of migrants coming from Texas to sanctuary cities like Chicago?
Well, immigration has been one of those issues that have not been addressed by neither party. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party has adopted very anti-immigrant, xenophobic narratives. We got to remember that President Biden, in his state of address, used one example of a crime to criminalize millions of people, millions of immigrants. So what we need for Vice President Harris is actually to look at the data and look at the evidence. What we've seen is operations like Operation Condor in Latin America destabilizing governments, actually arming and empowering dictators. And when Honduras, we just saw one of the government officials at the highest level of government involved in issues of trafficking, involved in criminal activity. We need to make sure that we look at those policies. We need to make sure that we allowed Latin American countries to address their own issues. And I like the posture that countries like Brazil, Colombia, Mexico are taking to make sure that we support democracies, that we help with humanitarian help and not with more military budgets that are destabilizing the region. And again, the evidence does not suggest that we are addressing the root cause. It's quite the opposite. We are displacing more and more people. The situation at the border is unsustainable, and I do think there are solutions. The Mexican government has proposed a very detailed plan that I think Vice President Harris must certainly take on.
Before I let you go, unable to attract a quorum, Mayor Brandon Johnson abandoned plans to interrupt the Chicago City Council's summer recess to install you as zoning committee chair. Some critics have said that was a sign that you don't have a lot of support in the city council. You have said there will be a block of the new Ridgerlocks 29 that opposes anything and everything that we try to do. That minority of the council will continue with the tactics of the past. Can you explain a little bit about what you mentioned in regards to the new Ridgerlock 29 and in regards to what happened and your confidence in being named?
Well, what we see is a small minority of the council. And when I refer to the Verdoliak 29, that's a majority bloc at the time in the 80s that blocked every effort of Mayor Washington to have his own leadership team. What we're seeing is the very same thing. A block of council members that are using draconian ideological reasons to block anything that the mayor does with the premise of transparency and with the premise of inclusion. Every mayor in the city of Chicago has been given the courtesy to establish their own leadership team. My track record as an economist, as someone who represents working people, is clear. I don't see any of my colleagues had issues with my predecessor, for instance, someone with a track record of exchanging zoning decisions for Viagra pills. But all of a sudden, they seem to have issues with someone who speaks clearly about the need for development to include every single neighborhood in the city of Chicago. And again, I think that across the city there is a need for change. And I think in city council, the majority of my council members, my colleagues, understand that we need to allow the mayor to have a leadership team that represents the best interests of the city and a vision for change that the city needs urgently.
Alderman Sigcho-Lopez, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.